Right.
And then once that works, it's kind of
Hi, I'm Dr. I'm Skarpi and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Datadog. And I'm here to talk about how you can avoid becoming Dr. Frankenstein. This is really a story about my journey into Salesforce and how I found myself in that Dr. Frankenstein moment where I asked, what have I created and what have I unleashed upon the world? So it's a story about a cold monster, basically. So a brief overview, going to be starting by introducing myself, then going a little bit into the company I have, and then how we did it wrong at the first time, and when I had that Dr. Frankenstein moment, and how we went about refactoring the moment, or the monster, and then some Q&A. Now, I'm Skarpi Steinthorsson, I'm Icelandic, so it's kind of a weird name, maybe. I've been a developer since I was a kid, but I've been a professional developer since 2000. I've been a Salesforce developer since 2016, so fairly new into the game, but I manage all sorts of projects, from Nordic social media sites to DVD touchscreen rental kiosks. So I have experience in the field. Now, the company we have, it has two products. The first one is MarkExcel, that was launched in 2014. MarkExcel is not really connected to Salesforce. It's a digital asset management platform, so we're basically storing your company's files and making them accessible to everyone in your company that has supposed to have access to them. So this is mainly for marketing departments. And MarkExcel can, of course, be used by sales department, but their main platform usually is CRM. So we were kind of looking into going there and having MarkExcel accessible through the CRM. But once we started doing some user testing, or interviewing really, we noticed that sales didn't really need MarkExcel. So that didn't need the functionality of it, or the features. So we began creating Datadog Sales Enablement. Originally it had another word, but then we got into a copywriting issue, and so now it's Datadog Sales Enablement until we get the correct word, copyright. So now the starting hand. This is when the development started. I call myself a developer veteran. I've managed all sorts of projects before, like I said, so I was kind of confident that it wouldn't be any problem going into developing Salesforce projects. And we had a good development team both in Iceland and England, so it was meant that it was kind of connected to the two products. MarkExcel was supposed to do all the lifting that Salesforce couldn't do. So we had a clear product vision, or semi-clear at least, of how we wanted the product to be. And that's when we began the development, and that's how we started running into problems. And the first problem is, I always use Git for all my projects. And we had all sorts of problems with metadata API and Git. Just getting everyone to have the same code base, right? Getting change sets from different kind of DevOps. I mean, it was complicated, really. We used Cloud9 for that, but I mean, we were still spending time fixing merging conflicts, getting all sorts of duplicate functionality, and it was a weird time, really. And then I'll just go over the problems that we had, really. For instance, we had to create a communication between Salesforce and MarkExcel. And we created two web services. We created a special web service using Apex in Salesforce, and a special web service in MarkExcel. And I didn't really have that deep Salesforce knowledge at that time, so technically we were throwing code at the problems. and that's always bad, right? So we were now managing two separate web services where we kind of didn't really need to. But it kind of shows how it was the wrong approach to it, that we developed everything ourselves without using the tools that are already in Salesforce, right? And then the report builder. For some reason, we didn't get it to work the way we wanted it to work. So we started creating our own reporting component in Lightning. And report, I don't know how many development hours into just creating a simple reporting component in Lightning. And that was our solution, create our own reporting component. And after all that throwing code at the problems for almost a year, we launched the product in World to London 2017. And after all that work, this was really the expectation. We had this beautiful grand cake that we were building. So it's supposed to be absolutely amazing. We had the talent and we had the experience. We had everything needed to create it. But because we were spending so much time just getting all the code together, using Cloud9, fixing merge conflicts, creating the reporting component, we spent that all just throwing code at problems. So the vision we had almost turned into like a tunnel vision where we had to throw code at every problem that we had. So when we launched, this was the reality. I mean, it's still functional cake, but it's probably delicious. The app had everything it needed to have, but it wasn't appealing. It wasn't what we needed it to be. And when we showcased it in World to London last year, I mean, people liked it, liked what we were doing, but there was always something missing. And we had some pretty good features that we were going to implement from the talks we had in World to London. But because we had this bloated infrastructure of the report builder and all that, all the report component, because we weren't using the report builder, it would have taken a huge amount of time. And this really is my Frankenstein moment. Whereas, what have I created? This code monster, what have I unleashed upon the world? And after countless sleepless nights and a serious case of imposter syndrome, I thought I wasn't really cut up for this. We had to do something, right? So, what to do? We could hire more developers. We could, we could throw money at the problem, really, with throw code, and it would have worked. We could have made good. The code wasn't really bad. It was more the way we were approaching all the problems. So, sorry. So, yeah, that was the first option we had, but it wasn't really good. But the second one was to develop it within Salesforce, not on top of it. So it was to use what Salesforce has to offer really to help us along. So if I go over the problems we had earlier, we had the metadata API and Git. So we used Cloud9 to push and pull changes and spent a huge amount of time on that. We actually replaced it with Force IDA, so we weren't losing any code anymore, but it was still a crazy amount of developing hours we were spending just managing code. And the developers themselves, instead of developing features, they were basically doing DevOps. They were creating all sorts of issues. So we used Salesforce DX. Well, that's now, really. We recently started using it, and it has revolutionized it. So we're not really getting any merge conflicts anymore. And the spread shorts are just amazing. If you're not using Salesforce DX, you're spending way much time, probably spending way much time on unnecessary DevOps. Because using Salesforce DX and Git, I mean, it's all out there. You can easily work from a different point in time. fix the problem. Definitely use Salesforce DX. And by the way, I don't work for Salesforce and they're not paying me to say this, so, but this is just how we solve the problems. Now, the next step was the web services. The 2 web services we created and we were managing. We took the Apex web service and basically trashed it. We deleted it. So instead, we moved some of the functionality to MarkExcel and just using REST API. And I mean, so instead of throwing code at the problem, we were looking at what Salesforce has to offer that we can use to make our life easier. Some of this might be common knowledge to you, but hopefully someone will reach out to someone. Now the report builder, we just got it working with the report builder. We took the whole reporting component that we created and we just trashed it. And it felt really good. I don't know how many lines of code we really threw away, but it was amazing. So now we're using custom report types to create the relationship we need to create the reports. So instead of spending time developing this big elaborate reporting component, we are now just using report builder. We're building the reports even for the customers themselves. So again, instead of throwing the code at the problem, we are using Salesforce to really leverage what we're doing. And probably the most important part is that we kind of implemented this microservice approach. So instead of building big features, we're building smaller functionality and using Salesforce or other functionality to put them together. So think big, big, small. Build small, sorry. So what that has allowed us to do is, I mean, just getting the features out is much quicker because you don't have to develop endlessly around forms and logic. So I think it's a good example that we had designed this big feature where you can set certain conditions and criteria and you can configure it to execute logic. So we basically scrapped that and created 2 invocable methods in Apex. And from those methods, we could create the whole functionality that we wanted, the whole feature, just using process builder and those invocable methods. And customers have taken that and created even their own learning management system. And so it's more customizations by building smaller and getting the customer to actually do the configuration. We help them, of course, a lot. And then you have unintended features. Right? Because we did that microservice approach where we are just helping or creating smaller amount of logic, we accidentally have hardware integration. Just because we did those invocable methods, so if you add them to the process builder, you can work with hardware. So the microservice approach really has opened the eyes for us to this. And of course, it's easier to maintain and easier to scale because you're working with smaller units of code and logic and letting Salesforce do the actual gluing of it together. So the end result is a much better product than the cake. So now, a year from now, we have a much better product. We have faster upgrades. The dev team is actually spending time developing features and not just resolving merge conflicts or finding code that was missing somewhere because it was forgotten in some dev works or something. So, and it's highly customizable. It really has helped us move along. I think the fastest run I've done through this presentation, by the way. I think about 15 minutes now. So, do you have any questions?
How did you go about training your developers to make that transition to Salesforce DX? What was the route you took? Just trailheads, blocks? How did you get more coordinated at once?
Well, I did the training basically, and I created small, because everyone is on Windows, but you can do it on any platform really. But I created small like bat files where you can easily manage commands. So you don't have to remember sfd exports, colon, blah blah. You just do dd create, and it does the rest for you. And that has really helped going on. But the developers are then picking up how do they do X and Y, and then they go into the deeper commands. But it's this transition of, because you can't really throw anyone like 5 lines of commands that you're supposed to learn this. Right? That has helped the development really taking on Salesforce DX. And if you're not using Salesforce DX, I would strongly recommend it. And before I'm not working for Salesforce. Question in the back.
I'm Peter Chittup. I do work for Salesforce. I'll get you that beer I promised you later. So listening to your talk, the question I have is, what's one thing that we could have done that would have helped you find the right way the first time around?
Well, nothing really. I had this mindset that I knew it all. I had managed so many projects before. I mean, it was just another project. But really push for the certifications. Because after that Frankenstein moment, I had no certifications. Now I have Dev 1 and Admin. And I strongly recommend, even for developers, to take the Admin one, because you learn so many features in that. You're not necessarily learning developer work, but you're learning more what Salesforce is about, like the process building. I don't think process builder is even covered in Dev 1, but it is in Admin. And it's really helped me that I learned probably more from the Admin certification than I did from the Dev certification.
Can I just answer that as well, Peter? So one of the things I found, unless you go into Salesforce and agree up front your ISV partnership and P&I and whatever you're doing, what models, and you know that up front, before you've actually built a product, you can't get to a tech evangelist. And I think if you'd had support for tech evangelist at the start, you could have avoided some of this. But it's not until you've actually developed your product, you're then ready to start talking about partnerships. So there's maybe a better way of doing that.
Okay, the dulcet sound of your voice didn't quite carry that here, but I'll catch it later.
Okay.
Yeah, but on that, we didn't get technical evangelist until Frankenstein moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, help from a technical evangelist beforehand and really hammering that use Salesforce and use it and build within Salesforce, not just on top. Because the original idea was just to build an app that was to sit on Salesforce, but it would be kind of independent. But we have broken that down into the microservice thing, and you can really tie it all together. And it's really powerful. Awesome. Yep.
How long did it take you to transition about to move to that microservice model, to move to the DX? I mean, was it a quick turnaround, or?
No, we did it in steps, and we kind of still are. I mean, the original plan always was to use MarkExcel as a helping hand for Salesforce, where Salesforce is missing the features. But now, once I've done the certifications and really looked into all the features, we didn't really need it in the end. So we plan on, the transition should be complete next winter. And then we have 100% native, nothing will be, the MarkExcel is the start.
So it's complete. When did you start it?
After World to London 2017.
Okay.
So yeah, but now, I mean, the main benefits of that change was just a couple of months. Because we were throwing away features.
Yeah.
We weren't really adjusting them. We took a reporting component and just trashed them. We did small changes in Salesforce. I mean, that alone just took a couple of days. So if you really know what you're going for and know how Salesforce works, it's not really, because it's already there. That's the beauty of it.
it sounds like you learn more from what doesn't work going forward.
Definitely.
Because you know not to use it or do things in that approach again. So.
Yeah, and that's what this talk is really about. I mean, hopefully this resonates with someone. But this throwing codes at the problem and doing everything ourselves it's a pitfall.
Before arriving at DX as a demo option for you, have you considered any other methodologies?
Other than Salesforce DX?
Yes.
Well, we tried because I'm a big fan of Git, and I mean, no, we looked at Force ID, Force.com ID, sure. I mean, it kind of worked, but just the isolated environment you get from Salesforce DX, even that alone, just beats everything else. Because I can take any code from any time in the past and fire up a dev work with that code and pull changes from it. You can't really do that. Well, no, I didn't find any way to do that. So everyone is working always on the same code base, the same functionality, and Git tracks changes, not files. So it's like this perfect component. I don't work for Git either. Yes?
Just one more question. If you can explain a bit about the unit of change you were doing with each scratch or each change. Was it a feature set or was it a user story? So what level of developers working when they do their Git branches and their scratch orgs?
It is usually a story. I mean, it kind of depends on the feature, but some features are bigger, some of them are just done within a day. So it depends on the setup of what you do. But it's so robust. I mean, I could get a new scratcher with any code in just a couple of minutes. It's amazing. Any more? Yeah, yes.
During the development of the product, how and when you decide there's a component available in Salesforce that can be used, or you have to write your own solution for it?
I didn't get the beginning. How?
When you were developing your product,
Yeah.
then how did you decide that there's a component in Salesforce that can be used as opposed to develop it? Like, what is the better way to do it, and how to find out whether it is available in Salesforce to use it for our development?
Well, the only way to find what is in Salesforce is just really try it. And the certification is really good because it's forcing you to learn stuff that you have no interest in. But
He's not listening.
no, but you don't have interest in certain parts of Salesforce. But it gives you power because you will find new ways to do things just by reading. So that's why I say Admin 1, I learned more from that because I learned what features I can leverage in Salesforce. Because Dev 1 is probably more about the development and Admin is about the features. So I would strongly recommend that certification.
Thank you.
Okay. Some more?